Welcome to The Explainer. So today we're diving into a really fascinating text, one that's over 2,000 years old. But what if all the famous stories you've heard about it, the angels, the giants, what if that's all just a smokescreen? What if this book is actually a 2,500-year-old warning about our world, right now?
Okay, let's break this down, because this is where it gets interesting. On one hand, you have the common myth, right? Fallen angels, giant Nephilim, a whole forbidden story. But the text itself, if you look closer, seems to be pointing to a hidden secret. A story that's actually about cosmic systems, about a broken order, and an ancient warning that has, almost nothing to do with monsters.
The source material for this whole explainer puts it pretty directly. There's a secret here that changes everything about how we're supposed to be reading this text. It's not just a fantastical story. It's an explanation of how something went terribly wrong.
So let's get right into it. The Book of Enoch, when you read it this way, doesn't really feel like a simple divine tour. It actually reads a lot more like a training manual. It's as if Enoch is being taught, step by step, how a vast, incredibly complex system is supposed to work. See, this tells us that Enoch isn't just some passive observer watching a bunch of divine chaos unfold. No, he's being positioned almost like a student, or maybe an auditor. He's learning about organized systems, how the heavens are supposed to move, how creation is ordered, how judgment actually functions, as if he's being prepped for something really important. So the very first clue to this whole systemic view is how the book talks about the universe itself. It's not just this beautiful kind of chaotic creation, it's presented as a machine, one that runs on an incredibly precise schedule. The text presents time as something that is actively organized, not just something that sorta passes by. The sun and the moon, for example, are described as following these very specific paths through assigned gates in the sky, always maintaining a perfectly regulated pattern. Think of it like a cosmic operating system. Everything has its place, its route, its designated function, and a pattern that is not supposed to be broken. It's this vision of a cosmos that's held together by an incredibly precise, managed structure. Okay, so let's get to the turning point. How do you get from a system of perfect order to one of total chaos? Because if the universe was so well designed, what could possibly go wrong? So, if it wasn't the giants stomping around, what really broke this perfectly balanced system? Well, the text points to something far more subtle, and frankly, far more dangerous: information. Now, this is a huge deal. The true disruption wasn't a physical threat at all. It was an informational one. The Great Flood wasn't a response to monsters. It was a response to the destabilizing impact of knowledge that was introduced to humanity way before it was ready for it. And the text is super specific here, listing out the kinds of knowledge, weaponry, enchantments, new ways of reading the stars. This was information that arrived faster than society's stability could possibly support it. And that imbalance, that information overload, that becomes the real turning point that corrupts the entire system. And this idea of a grand system, it extends all the way to the top. Heaven itself isn't described as some mystical, unknowable place. It's described as something much more familiar, almost like an administration. Yeah, this whole narrative paints a picture of heaven as a place governed by process and structure, not by random whims. It functions with this methodical, almost bureaucratic precision. And the details really reinforce this. You see angels with specific, assigned jobs. There are detailed records of every single action being kept. Judgments aren't just handed down, they're carried out through consistent processes. Every piece fits. The whole thing runs like a well-oiled system. So, what happens when a perfectly designed system becomes corrupted by information it can't handle and just starts to break down? Well, you don't just punish it. You reboot it. You perform a system reset. And this is a really key shift in perspective. The Book of Enoch stops being a prophecy and starts reading more like an after-action report. It's a post-mortem analysis of a failed world, documenting exactly what went wrong, what caused disruption, and why the system just couldn't hold itself together anymore. So this is the central conflict of the entire story. It's not really good versus evil in the way we usually think about it. It's the fight between divine order and system failure, between structure and chaos, between stability and total collapse when boundaries are crossed and the system gets overloaded with information. So in the end, this whole thing isn't about giants or some vengeful god. The text is a warning. The real sin, the real reason that civilization fell, it was disorder.
The system broke.
And that reframes this entire ancient text as a timeless allegory, doesn't it? It kind of asks us to look at our own world, our own complex systems of information, technology, and society, and consider a very, very old question. Just how stable is the order we all depend on?